right? Like in the actual comics themselves, because Peter Parker had like just died, and then Miles, in order to honor the memory of Peter, went out and got a Spider-Man suit, and then was like, okay, let's be Spider-Man. Right? He was met by like Nick Fury. He was met by Jessica Drew, or whatever you want to call her, basically the Ultimate Universe version of Spider Girl, Spider Woman, and they were kind of like, right? Like you're disrespecting the memory of Peter. But the reality was that Miles believed that he was honoring the memory of Peter. Right? Like he believed he was doing the right thing, and so ultimately he ended up getting the blessing of Nick Fury. And then this led to the introduction of the Prowler. Right? The Prowler was a character who had already been around, and the Prowler was basically the uncle of Miles Morales. He was basically Aaron. Right? And the idea behind this was that you ended up having Miles basically allying himself with Aaron as part of Aaron's request. Now, when Miles sort of realized things were a little sketchy here, that's when all this kind of sort of popped off, right? But this really is kind of like when the two of them first start teaming up. We, as the reader, knew that Aaron was a bad guy, right? Like we knew he was basically a villain. He was one of the most wanted men in the United States, and in fact, he was wanted by Interpol and the FBI, right? Like it was a huge deal. Again, probably one of the best thieves, if not the best thief in the entirety of the Ultimate Universe. He was kind of a big deal. Now, with him and Miles teaming up for the first time, this involves them going after a guy by the name of Scorpion. Involved in the Ultimate Universe, the Scorpion character. And you're probably familiar with him from like maybe Spider-Man the animated series back in the 90s, or comic books, or whatever the case is. But the Scorpion that you initially saw in Ultimate Comics was part of the Ultimate Universe line of the Clone Saga, right? Like cloning Peter Parker. That's where the Jessica character came from, and so on. But the Scorpion was a clone of Peter Parker, right? So that was kind of like that version that we saw. I wouldn't go as far as to say he was hugely popular. I honestly didn't really enjoy the whole concept. But the thing about this is that this version of Scorpion that we see here is the guy who's actually named Maximus Garden, right? So his name is almost identical to the one from the main Marvel Universe, Max Garden. The difference here is that unlike Matt Gargan in the main Marvel Universe, who's a guy who Maximus Gargan was basically a Mexican essentially what he was. He was like a Mexican drug kingpin, but he was working for Powell. And so essentially you had this kind of exchange that was supposed to go on between the two of them. But basically Maximus Gargan ended up turning on the Prowler. It led into a great big huge fight. Prowler basically got out of there, and then Maximus has come here to New York City in order to make himself a kingpin. And because of the fact that he was able to overcome Prowler before, the indication is he can do it again, right? So he's not too worried about the Prowler's character. But that's why they're here. It's because Aaron is trying to get rid of Maximus, or trying to get rid of Scorpion, because Scorpion's encroaching on his turf. The idea of these switching to Miles Morales is he's a bad guy, right? So we got to get rid of bad guys. So he's essentially using Miles' desire to be a hero in order to effectively turn Miles into his own enforcer. Is really kind of what's happening here. But Scorpion showing up here and just being like, okay, so like this is my spot now, right? Like I'm taking over this. Like I was a guy who operated in Mexico, that's true, but like now I want to swim with a bigger fish, right? And so I'm taking the entirety of New York over. I'm going to become its new kingpin. The funny thing about this is that he's immediately met by Aaron. Right? He's immediately met by the Prowler, and in turn the Prowler's like, okay, so like you gotta go. Right, you gotta go. Now the response of Scorpion is like, you still owe me payment, right? Like you still owe me for our last deal that went down. Technically that's true. That when that deal initially went down, that Aaron was the one who refused to love to his end of the bargain. Now he did so under the auspices that Scorpion tried to double cross him, right? And saying like, you forfeited your share of this whole thing when you tried to double cross me, but technically a deal is a deal. And so the result of this is that, Scorpion's here to kind of call in and take out the Prowler if he can, and then take over New York himself. Now, of course, this leads to Spider-Man jumping in. Now, there are questions that you're most likely asking, right? Where are characters like Daredevil, or like Luke Cage, or Heroes for Hire, or any of the number of ground-level heroes that we see in New York that can easily respond to a threat like this? The reality of the Ultimate Universe, guys, is that it was designed to be a far more stripped-down version of the main Marvel Universe. The main Marvel Universe, just to give you perspective, had like thousands of mutants who would appear over the course of Marvel's publication history. And those are the ones that they focused on for any real measure of time. When you take into account the one-offs, the ones who appeared for like a single story, then you're starting to get into the hundreds of thousands, right? There were just, so many different mutants that had appeared. And so you take that and you expand it to like the almost never-ending roster of Avengers. You add in things like the Midnight Suns, right? You add in like, Doctor Strange's Black Ops Defenders team from like the 1990s, right? They carried out like all these secret missions and things like that. It was super cool. It was an awesome concept. It was terribly executed, but it was an awesome concept. But you take all these things and you throw it in, and what you end up in the main Marvel Universe, you end up with this just hugely expansive landscape of heroes, and it's insane.
signature can you do in red with blood splatter as well? I'm not going to call it a murder sig, but something similar if you don't mind. Do in white with blood splatter. Okay, yeah. But I won't do a white blood splatter, if you know what I mean. I just can't, but I can do a white signature with a red blood splatter, yeah. Or I can do like a white tentacle style, but I can't do white splatters. It's just something I can't do. So, apologize. That's for you. That's not. It's for you. It's for both of us. It's helping us both.
He's just kind of got enhanced ability, but they're enough to where he can easily hold his own against, like, being shot at or being stabbed or something along those lines, right? So he doesn't really have blue painted skin, but something reasonably close to it. The other part of this is that given his enhanced abilities, he also was able to go toe-to-toe with Miles Morales. But the reason why this happens is because Miles is still learning about his powers, right? He's still learning what he's capable of. Now, a lot of
He's still learning that he can lift like 1,000 tons.
will actually come in the first Spider-Man story, which we will.
Spider-Man.
It was really cool. It was when Bendis basically told all the Miles Morales haters to shut up. When they were like, he's not really Spider-Man. Bendis literally wrote a story where Peter Parker from the main Marvel universe and Miles Morales from the Ultimate universe, and Peter Parker's like, who cares what the world says? I think you're a great Spider-Man. Go forward, right? And basically Bendis saying, hey, I know you guys, some of you guys out there don't like Miles Morales. Tough luck. And then just like continuing to write the story. It was amazing. It was a hilarious response to the haters. But the funny thing about this is that Miles is learning his powers. And so when it comes to somebody like Peter, right, if we look at like even the Ultimate Universe comics version of Spider-Man Peter Parker, or you look at the main Marvel Universe version of Spider-Man Peter Parker, the important thing is that in the early days he had his learning, he had his process where he learned his powers, but as time went on, it started to become second nature, to where he could just react and instinctively know what he needs to do. That's one of the things that kind of came out of Dan's last one, is when he was talking about why Spider-Man would crack jokes all the time. Because where you kind of looked at it and saw Spider-Man as almost kind of a nonsensical character, when he was engaging in fights and didn't really seem to be taking it seriously, the reason why he would crack jokes is because he wanted to make the villains think he wasn't taking them seriously. And that in turn would piss them off. And the angrier they got, the less focused they became, and the easier it would be for Peter Parker to take them out. That's one of the things that he kind of learned over the course of his time as Spider-Man. With Miles Morales, it'll be much the same way. That as we cover these comics, you'll quite literally see Miles become better at being Spider-Man. But in these early comics here, in this third volume of his original run, he doesn't really know what he's doing. He doesn't really have any official training. And that's really what he was told by Nick Fury. When Nick Fury sanctioned him as being Spider-Man, he's like, you're on your own to figure out how to be a superhero. We're not going to train you, right? We're not going to give you like official training, at least not at the moment. We're not going to do anything with that, right? Like, you just got to become the best version of Spider-Man that you can on your own. And if you really are meant to be a great Spider-Man, then you will become one. If not, then you'll probably suck and you'll probably end up being, best of luck. And that was basically it. It was kind of a dick move. But, ultimately, one of the things that Miles ends up doing is underestimating Scorpion, right? In the sense that he's able to overcome him for a minute. And where Aaron wants to get revenge on Scorpion, the response of Miles is, no, it's one thing to stop a criminal. It's another to go out of your way and try to kill the guy, right? Like, that's not going to do anybody any good. And ultimately, Miles ends up intending to kind of walk away. Now, Scorpion wakes up. Scorpion attacks Miles. Miles goes invisible. He attacks Scorpion again. And then when Miles turns his back, Scorpion gets away. And so it's one of these things where he's constantly underestimating the villains that he faces off against. But that's because he simply hasn't learned that you have to make sure that they're not dead, right? Like, that's one of the things that Peter kind of right as time went on. That, like, as he would face off against different villains, he would realize just because they look like they're not dead doesn't mean they are. Right? You gotta pummel them a few extra times. Then you gotta smack them around a little bit more than you normally would. And then, then they'll be knocked out. And that'll basically be it. You gotta slap them around a bit. It's kind of what Peter Parker would do. But of course, this leads to of course, Miles Morales tracking down Scorpion, going to attack him again, and then using his venom blast, right, to essentially incapacitate him. This kind of venom shock ability that he has to incapacitate Scorpion, and then handing Scorpion over to the cops. Now, the response to the police officers is to initially try to arrest Miles Morales, and that is the way his comics were in the early days, right? And it wasn't really like a racial thing. It wasn't like he's wearing a black Spider-Man costume. Obviously, he's black. Get him! It wasn't necessarily like that. It was this idea that they didn't know him. Like when Peter Parker first showed up on the scene, in a lot of ways, it was kind of a welcoming thing. Now, a lot of that was because of the fact that it was Spider-Man, right? And nobody wants to really really read comics, the world hates Spider-Man. And then two, because it was kind of the launch of the Ultimate Universe, right? So it was designed to be kind of a celebratory run, this kind of celebratory inaugural run in Peter. Now he didn't run into a whole bunch of problems, and there were times when society was kind of like, but nonetheless, with Miles Morales, in a lot of ways, the writing, how the cops are depicted here is designed to kind of depict the naysayers, right? In the sense that he's not Spider-Man, we don't really know what's going on here, but get rid of him. He's not legit. And so as a result
What
of
you
that,
doing?
he makes himself invisible and ends up being gone, right? Ends up,
That
going
paper
back
right
to
here.
where Aaron was looking to find Aaron, and Aaron basically just eats him.
Oh.
Now the next day, you end up getting Miles meeting up with Kate, right?
Mhm.
Meeting up with Kate. The two of them kind of talking, and he's like, dude, you busted like Maximus, right? You busted the Scorpion, like this huge thing. And then that's when he starts talking to his Uncle Aaron. And his Uncle Aaron's like, he's like, where'd you go? He's like, I went to go get some rest. Are you okay? And it's like, okay, like we're just getting started, right? Like we're gonna get back to this again. And Miles' initial idea is no, like I don't want to be involved in this. Right? And that's when Aaron kind of breaks out that blackmail card in the sense of like, I want to like, then maybe I should hit up your dad. Right? Maybe I should tell your dad what's going on. Now that's a little bit of backstory that we haven't really explained yet. The idea was that Aaron, of course, has kind of always been a criminal his whole life. It started out with him just kind of getting into mischief when he was younger, and then graduating into more intense and more not really violent, but more serious crimes. The father of Miles was involved in that to a degree, but eventually went his own separate way. And he kind of went, basically went on the right path, kind of corrected himself, and got himself into a better place. The result of this is that the father of Miles does not like Aaron. He does not want Aaron to have any involvement in Miles' life, and he's made that clear to Miles, right? Like, do not spend time with your uncle. He's a bad guy, right? Like, he's a criminal. Like, if you follow him, like, he will get you into trouble. He doesn't care about anybody. He doesn't care about anything. If he leads you to believe that he cares about you, it's because he's duping you, right? Like, he's using you for his own ends. And so that's one of the things that kind of went on here is that Miles knew he wasn't really supposed to be spending time with Aaron, but he has been anyway. The other part of this is that Miles' parents don't know anything about his powers, right? They don't know that he's Spider-Man. And so he's kind of trying to keep this secret from them. Now, it's one of these things where Aaron knows this and then uses it against him and says, well, I mean, we can go in there right now. Right? When Miles meets him later on, he's like, we can go in there right now. And I can just tell them everything that's going on. Miles' response is, no, fine, like, I'll meet with you the same place as last time. And so when the two of them end up meeting up together, Miles shows up and says, this is not going to happen. He's like, I'll tell my parents if I need to, but here's what's going to go on. You're going to leave town, right? Like, you are really a bad person. You're every bit as bad as my dad said you were, right? Like, you really don't care about anybody but yourself. Like, you don't come near me. You don't come near my parents, right? Now, this was important for Miles. This was a hugely important moment for Miles Morales. And the reason why is because for his character, the way he was originally written, he wasn't necessarily a people pleaser, but he had this desire to connect with his Uncle Aaron. And the fact that he was able to connect to a degree, even when he was younger, and he spent time with him, knowing that he wasn't necessarily supposed to, in this moment right now, spending time with his Uncle Aaron and trying to get to know him on a more personal level is compounded and made difficult by the fact that Aaron really is a bad guy. And so coming to him, with Miles Morales being largely a character who lacked a lot of confidence in himself, right? He lacked confidence in himself, what he was capable of and what he could achieve, to in turn come along and to go against somebody like the Prowler, who, despite not having the powers of Spider-Man, is wildly capable of going toe-to-toe with one. He's basically saying, like, you're going to leave here, right? Like, you're going to leave this town. You're never going to talk to me or my parents again, and it's one of these things where Prowler's like, fine, like, if you want to play with the big boys, then you've got to be ready. And then he, in turn, attacks Miles Morales. And this is not an easy fight for Miles, right? Using a combination of all of his gadgets, his sonics, all those things at his disposal, he's able to kind of get the upper hand on Miles. But one of the important things here is that Miles starts to gain more confidence in his abilities and begins to use his powers in the way that he's supposed to, right? Making himself invisible, using sneak attack, using subtlety, different things like that. And that's one of the important things to understand is that when it comes to someone like Miles, what he lacks in experience, he makes up for it in powers that Peter Parker simply just didn't have. Peter Parker did not have Venomable because he could not make himself invisible, right? And so, with Miles, the fact that he's still learning how to fight, this actually bends itself to his favor, right? Instead of being something that can just enhance his existing abilities, it can help him compensate for his lack of experience, right? Make himself invisible and then coming back around again. And so he's able to kind of get the upper hand on Aaron and actually ends up damaging one of his gloves, right? One of his power gloves. And when that happens, of course, the fight ends up leading down into the street where basically there's almost like this massive wrecker or this city bus, kind of topples over when Aaron ends up blasting it, right, with his glove. And that's really when Miles begins to get the bigger picture that Aaron really doesn't care about anybody but himself, that he really is a tried and true villain. And this is also significant because one he's just a bad person. And the fact that he's willing to like endanger the lives of a busload of people in order to get the upper hand in a fight against Miles Morales really shows the kind of person that he is. And so at that point, Miles Morales starts cutting loose, right? He starts letting loose, and it's just like, fuck. Like if that's how we're gonna fight, then let's fight. This is gonna be a knockdown, drag out fight. He uses his venom blast, starts literally hitting Aaron from every direction and getting the upper hand. The problem with this is that in a split second, Aaron gets the upper hand on Miles and goes to attack him and seemingly does it with the intention of killing him. The problem with this is the previous attack by Miles, the damage his glove, ends up coming from the roots where the whole thing explodes, right? It's like a bomb going on. And when that happens, it kills Aaron, right? It looks like it kills him. And so it's just kind of like the last little word that Miles gets here from Aaron is like, look at that, right? You're just like me. We don't care who you kill as long as you come out on top. It's just this crushing response to Miles effectively getting his uncle killed, or seemingly getting his uncle killed. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy.
That's amazing. Miles Morales is his uncle the Prowler was the uncle and the robber for him at the same time. Great writing.
Here's the important thing about this, right? Spider-Man is
It's a great twist.
Spider-Man stories, I'd say, of the last 15 years. And the reason why is because this is the story where Peter Parker first met Miles Morales, right? So, one of the things that we talked about here over the course of really some of the Miles Morales videos that we've done, and a lot of the Peter Parker videos that we did, is we kind of talked about the nature of the Ultimate Universe, right? So if you guys are familiar with this, we just finished a video yesterday where we talked about that, the Miles Morales one, right? So just kind of bear with me. We'll probably have some new people to the channel. I know you guys kind of like to get directly into it, but bear with me for a second while I kind of reiterate this. For the people who are new here, right, who are new to Marvel Comics, in Marvel you have a very interesting multiverse, right? Technically, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is considered part of the multiverse that makes up all of Marvel Comics. We know that for a couple different reasons. One, because it actually has a numerical designation among the Marvel multiverse, and two, because there's comics based on it, right? So that kind of brings us closer in line with being part of the Marvel multiverse. But where you have Marvel Comics as it was originally launched in the 1960s, right, with the Fantastic Four 1, so on and so forth, that's referred to as Earth 616, right? Also known as the main Marvel universe. What we got in the year 2000 was the creation of the Ultimate Universe. And this was an answer to the question, what would it look like if at that point in time, in the year 2000, superheroes had just basically popped up, right? They just kind of emerged for the very first time. What would those superheroes look like? How would they function? How would all that stuff work? And that's basically when you got Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe. Now, Ultimate Spider-Man was exceedingly popular, right? It was hugely popular because in a lot of ways it was kind of an indirect reboot, right? Marvel didn't really reboot everything with the main Marvel Universe Spider-Man. They just gave us a new one, and people loved it. Right? People absolutely loved it. But what you saw was a story where basically Peter Parker died. Right? Peter Parker Spider-Man was killed, and it might behoove us to go back and cover that again, right? Cover Cataclysm and the death of Peter Parker. Right? It might behoove us to do that just because we're kind of doing a lot of this stuff because the new Spider-Man game is coming out for the PlayStation. But the idea is that when that version of Peter Parker died, we ended up getting Miles Morales in its place. And when Miles Morales first showed up, there was a lot of naysayers. There were a lot of people who were just kind of like, Miles Morales sucks. He's not really Spider-Man. He's not really Peter Parker, that kind of a thing. Because it kind of came from a couple different places. A lot of fans were latched on to the idea of Peter Parker, even when they were reading him before the Ultimate Universe was launched, right? So all they really got was just another alternate reality version of Peter, and they loved it. A lot of people grew attached to Peter Parker Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe when that was their first place to start in Marvel Comics. But by whatever manner and whatever means, a lot of people just didn't want to see things change. This story is, in a lot of ways, kind of Brian Michael Bendis snubbing people who were naysayers of Miles Morales, right? People who were just like, this character's not going to last or anything like that. It was kind of Bendis just being like, no, he will. Like, he's going to be around for a long time. And that's really where this comes from. And I tell you that because it's important that you understand the historical context of the story as we get into it so you can understand why this story is considered to be so important. With all that out of the way, let us jump to the main story itself. And so what we end up getting here is picking up in the main Marvel Universe, or 616, with Peter Parker Spider-Man. And it's Peter Parker just kind of doing the stuff that Peter Parker does, right? Like swinging around, coming across some criminals, some guys who are doing something they're not supposed to do. But here's the funny thing about this. Because of the fact that this story was written as a way to kind of tie into or kind of bring together the Ultimate Universe and the Marvel Universe, this story was written in such a way to where it was designed to treat people as if they're aware of who Spider-Man is, but they don't really know much about him. Right? They don't really know a whole lot about the character. And so it's kind of reiterating the nature of Peter Parker. And that's one of the things that see in Marvel Comics, there are certain characters out there who people know who they are, right? People know who Iron Man is. People know who Spider-Man is. People know who Wolverine is. But knowing who the character is and understanding the history and the context of the characters are two distinctly different things. It's like a lot of people know who Iron Man is, but I doubt they really know anything about the Mandarin, or I doubt they know about stories like Demon in a Bottle and why it's so important. What is it, the Five Nightmares run by Matt Fraction, different things like that, right? Arno Stark, Kieran Gillen's run. A lot of people probably aren't really familiar with that. So the idea is that we're just kind of giving Peter Parker in terms of how Peter Parker operates. But just to say, kind of using to himself about how much he loves New York City, and the fact that New York City is kind of like a thinking, breathing entity, right? That there are so many facets to this city. You've got people who have their nose to the ground, and they're just grinding day in and day out, just trying to make it by. You've got people who are just super high up in their ivory towers, the Tony Starks, the Reed Richards, who don't really have to worry about small things, right? But you kind of have everybody who falls in between, and there's just so many different varying types of people in the city of New York that it's just so unique in that way. What it also has are criminals. There's criminals in New York City, and Spider-Man goes to visit some, and he basically follows them one or two times, shows them what for, and then of course ends up pulling over the vehicle, which is their getaway car. And as soon as he's there, he's met by the arrival of the cops, right? The cops are like, take off your mask, show us your face, that. Now the truth about this is, I was never really part and parcel to this kind of depiction of Spider-Man.
Like when people just send me pictures of their collection.
I've had stories over the years where J. Jonah Jameson
Like, sure.
have kind of managed to sort of turn, the idea of Spider-Man into something where he can't really be trusted. He's a menace. But the long and short of it is that over the years, Spider-Man was largely trusted by society, right? Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He was a good guy, right? He was largely trusted in that way. There have been times where it's waxed and waned, but in this instance, I kind of feel like it should have been one of those things where it's like, thanks, Spider-Man, and that's kind of it, right? Now, the fact that cops show up here and he's behind the wheel of a getaway car, I give him a little reason to be sus, right? But I don't know why I say it all the time. Brian started saying sus, and now I say it all the time, right? Like, sus. It's a weird word. But anyway, once he takes off and he kind of, goes and does this thing, he ends up finding this building, this kind of, this office building basically, where the roof has been shattered, right? The glass has been shattered. And he's kind of like, that's a little weird. Now, of course, he ends up being drawn to that location because of the giant bright light, almost kind of an explosion sort. And of course, once he gets there, like, the whole place kind of seems to be tarnished, right? And there's just this white light, or this bright light emanating from it all. Now, as he gets in there and as he starts investigating, his initial thought is, this energy source is a little weird. Now, this story was released about a year after Spider-Man Big Time. And for those of you guys who aren't really familiar, if you've ever wanted to get into Spider-Man, I always suggest people start with Big Time. We have that whole series covered on my channel. And Big Time was the start of Dan Slott's run. You had Spider-Man, and you had Mary Jane, who were like married and all that kind of stuff. And then you got One More Day, then you got Brand New Day, where Marvel basically nullified it all. Because that was just so poorly received, Big Time was kind of Marvel's huge shift with Peter Parker, like focusing on like an all new age for Peter Parker Spider-Man. But that's kind of a good place to start, right? Because Dan Slott's run begins with that and runs all the way up through Secret Wars and after Secret Wars into Clone Conspiracy, right? So it's like a 10, almost 15-year long run of Spider-Man. It's very, very lengthy, but I think it's also incredibly good. I think it's an amazing run on Spider-Man. But the whole idea behind this is that that this takes place about a year after that. Now, the reason why I mention that is because I'm not entirely partial to how this is handled by Bendis, right? Bendis is notorious for character, and it's the thing is that continuity didn't happen, right? It's just like the only thing that happened with this character is what I'm doing, and ignoring continuity in its entirety. Now, whether it's kind of Bendis is always that way, I'm not 100% sure. I wasn't really reading Bendis back when he was part of event publications with Jimmy Palmiotti and Joe Quesada. I wasn't really reading him back then. I only really got familiar with Brian Michael Bendis once he actually came into the main Marvel itself and was writing like New Avengers, right? And New Avengers was a wholly new thing, so he could kind of get away with that. It's something that I think maybe a result of like his huge amount of popularity. He's kind of like, I'm Bendis. I can do whatever the heck I want. I don't know if that's really the case or not, but the reason why that matters is because during Spider-Man Big Time, Peter Parker's intelligence had always kind of been downplayed by Marvel Comics, right? They never really kind of elevated Peter Parker to being on par with like Reed Richards or Tony Stark. You always kind of knew he was, but they never really did any of that for him. Instead, what you end up getting here is Peter Parker kind of looking at this and just being like, man, this is weird. He's like, it's not anything alien in nature. Maybe I should get a hold of like Tony Stark or Reed Richards or something like that. During Big Time, one of the big things that Dan Slott did was focus on the intelligence of Peter Parker. And it being like, Peter Parker's actually pretty daggone smart. He doesn't always need Reed Richards or Tony Stark to solve a problem on his own. That was kind of solidified in the story where there was like a bomb that was going to go off, and nobody else could defuse it. And Peter Parker was the one who did, right? So it was kind of elevating his intelligence up and basically telling the reader base, hey, Peter Parker's not as dumb as he's being made out to be. real and serious threat. The other part of this is that Mysterio keeps rambling on about how like Peter Parker's ruining things and he's kind of destroying things and so on and so forth. And then he goes as far as to say, like, you have no idea what you're dealing with, right? You have no idea what I'm capable of. I missed out when you died the first time. I'm not going to miss out this time, right? So right off the bat, our cue is that this is some kind of ability from Mysterio to actually look through into the Ultimate Universe where that version of Peter Parker died. And Mysterio wants to be in that universe where Peter Parker doesn't exist, right? His main nemesis, the person that always foiled his plans, he's just trying to find a way to escape. And so what you end up getting here is Peter just kind of looking at this and saying, like what is this?
Beautiful, my darling.
Or whatever this is. It's weird that this is here, but like I can call people that can basically bring this down and take this thing apart, so we don't really have to worry about it, right? While Peter Parker doesn't really know what's going on with this device, he knows enough about Mysterio to know it's probably not a good thing, right? Like when supervillains start doing weird things you don't understand, you can usually just assume it's bad, and you're not usually wrong in doing that. It's a good rule of thumb to have. But of course, in his desperation, Mysterio ends up grabbing a handgun and firing it off, and then missing Peter Parker and hitting his device. And when that happens, he's yanked through. Right here is seemingly yanked through into basically the Ultimate Universe. And this is the first time. One of the reasons why this is so big. This is the very, very first time in the history of Marvel Comics that a character from the main Marvel Universe crossed over into the Ultimate Universe. Right? This was a huge deal. Now the Ultimate Universe, it exists now in Marvel Comics, but it's nowhere near as a big deal as it was back in like the early to mid 2000s. Right, at around the time, and even really in the early 2010s when this story was written, this is when the Ultimate Universe was really kind of at its prime, depending on what you were reading. There was a lot of fall off after the death of Peter Parker. We can't really. That's just an absolute thing. We can't really argue that point. But the death of Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe actually made headlines. Right? It made national news headlines. And so because that, there was a lot of interest in the Ultimate Universe, and so it was really a great time to capitalize on that, right? To kind of give us this story. But this is a big deal when this first happened. And so as Peter Parker's there, he's like, okay, this is weird. Like it's suddenly daytime. I don't know what that great big huge building is over there. That's the Triskelion, that great big huge tower-looking thing off in the water. You guys probably recognize the Triskelion from Captain America: The Winter Soldier. That's where this comes from. That's why we say the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a combination of the Ultimate Universe, the main Marvel Universe, and Earth 98, where the heroes age in real time. It's kind of a combination of those three things. But he ends up traveling back to the building where you had the whole Mysterio's base of operations and everything popping off, and he basically ends up breaking into the place, only to find out that it's occupied with some girl in a towel, and he's like, my bad. And basically bails out, right? Ends up taking off. From there, he actually ends up rescuing a guy who's kind of being beat up a little bit. He takes out the two people who were beating this dude up, and he basically says he was just playing pool and suddenly they jumped him. But the fact that he's wearing a Peter Parker costume, wearing a Spider-Man costume, does not go unnoticed by this guy. And he's like, look, I appreciate you saving me, but like, it's really in bad taste for you to wear that costume right now. What's more so than that, he's like, we all need heroes, but that was Peter Parker's costume. And that's one of the big things to know. When Peter Parker died, and even Peter Parker as Spider-Man, his identity was known, right? When all that popped off, his identity was known to the world. People were like, the world needs to know that this is the kid who tried to save everybody, who died a hero. That's why the death of Peter Parker was so massive in the Ultimate Universe, right? Like, imagine, for example, that like in the main Marvel Universe, in Marvel Comics, that Iron Man dies, and it's this great big huge event that crosses over every single comic that they have, right? It's like the death of Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk tie, and the Captain America tie, and all that kind of stuff, right? Like everything ties into just the fact that Iron Man died. And obviously, that's what the death of Peter Parker was. It was huge. It was massive because Spider-Man had never actually been killed off in Marvel Comics with no intention of bringing him back. Like that's just never happened before. I mean, Marvel kind of tried it with his own saga, but that was never going to happen. With the Ultimate Universe, it's the way it is. Peter Parker's been dead. Like the Peter Parker Spider-Man concept is dead, and Miles Morales has taken it over and has been that way ever since. So it was kind of a big deal. It was a huge deal when it happened. But this guy, the fact that this guy reveals that they know who Peter Parker is, really throws like the main Marvel Universe Peter Parker off because his identity is something that he keeps insanely close guarded. Right now, in Civil War, he revealed it to the world just as kind of a proof of the fact that he trusted Iron Man's superhero registration. But of course, as we saw in the aftermath of that random day, the Doctor Strange came along and just magic everybody's memory of Peter Parker's identity out of their heads. Right? He's just like, magic, and then nobody remembered that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and that was essentially it. Right? That was basically it. That's probably what they're going to end up doing in Spider-Man 3, the movie. But the whole point behind this is that this throws Peter Parker for a loop because he's kind of like, okay, that's crazy. Like wherever it is, they're referring to me in the third person. So one, this guy doesn't know who I am, but he knows who Peter Parker is. Peter Parker. It's like Peter Parker has come back. That's what kind of blew things off, right? That's what drives. That's what makes Miles Morales kind of go nuts here. Okay, so we are picking back up again with Spider-Man Part 2. And this week we're going to kind of run through a whole bunch of Spider-Man related content, mostly because of the fact that the new Spider-Man game's coming out. We kind of want to be done in time for all that stuff. But in this one, we pick up with Part 2. Right now, again, hope you guys are just joining us here. Spider-Man is the first time that Peter Parker from the main Marvel universe meets Miles Morales.
Oh, thank you, Freddy. This anti-venom is my best one. I appreciate that. I think it looks pretty cool, huh? He's looking mighty good.
What this does is it wakes up with Mysterio in the aftermath. Now, as soon as Mysterio comes to, his immediate response is, "Really, bro?" He's incredibly pissed off, right? Because he's just like, "This is the worst thing." Now, it's not like super complicated or anything. That's one of the great things about Brian Michael Bendis with writing really Ultimate Spider-Man and Miles Morales Spider-Man. I always say Bendis is better when he's writing kids or teenagers. When it comes to adults, he's not that good. But with kids or teenagers, he's amazing, right? So writing Miles Morales, he was super good at it. But the idea behind this is that from Mysterio's perspective, he does not want to run into another situation where Peter Parker exists. That him basically stumbling across the Ultimate Universe was a universe where Peter Parker Spider-Man didn't really exist. Peter Parker had never heard of Mysterio. And so with him really presuming that Miles Morales, they knew Miles existed, then Miles can be somebody he can overcome pretty quickly, right? Because by and large, when it comes to Marvel Comics, villains from the main Marvel universe are usually more powerful than villains from the Ultimate Universe. Even main characters themselves. Even somebody like a Phoenix Force or like Loki, they're really powerful characters in relation to their Ultimate Universe counterparts because the Ultimate Universe was designed to be more toned down and realistic. Even in the normal comic books, if you're writing a character and really the story is as close as you can get to in your world, you probably don't want to see these wild flights of fantasy when it comes to ridiculous levels of power, right? Like the Marquis of Death, different things like that. But the whole idea here is that what you end up having is Mysterio who basically kind of brings out this kind of avatar. And this is basically a version of himself, kind of a robotic version of himself, that can go into the Ultimate Universe in his stead, right? Because if you're Mysterio, you don't want to get yourself killed going into the Ultimate Universe. You send the robot in your place. And so switching over to Peter and Miles, this is one of the interesting things here, albeit a little strange. And the reason why is because initially Peter doesn't know what to make of Miles, and Miles doesn't know what to make of Peter. Right? He's like, what in the world's going on? And Peter hasn't figured out the Ultimate Universe because he doesn't know what the Ultimate Universe is. He just knows he's in some other place, right? And seemingly picking up pretty quickly on the fact that he's in some kind of an alternate dimension. And so because of this, there's a kind of fight that starts to break out between Peter and Miles because Peter's like, okay, you're freaking me out, right? Because they keep going back and forth, right? Peter's like, what's the deal here? Miles is like, you tell me. Peter's like, is it a clone thing? And he's like, what's a clone thing? It's like, you tell me. And I thought it was some kind of Nick Fury test. Is it a Nick Fury test? And Miles is like, you tell me. And it's like, they're just kind of going back and forth, right? So Peter gets frustrated, gets a little test, and ends up attacking Miles, right? Ends up going after Miles. But Miles, for his part, immediately dodges Spider-Man's way, right? And so from there, what you end up getting is this really interesting situation where Miles is able to bob and weave and duck all of Spider-Man's attacks and then counter proportionally. Now, this is where things get a little wonky, right? This is where things get a little, I don't know how I feel about that, right? Because keep in mind, Miles has not been formally trained by anybody at S.H.I.E.L.D. yet, right? And anybody in this Australia, like Nick Fury or any of those guys. And so he is still, in a lot of ways, flying by the seat of his pants. And so the fact that we're kind of getting this version of Miles who, over his time in being Spider-Man, is able to go toe-to-toe with Peter Parker, who's been training this world for a very long time, not only go toe-to-toe, manage to dodge his attacks, and then shock him, is a little bit stunning here. No pun intended. Is a little bit stunning here. But the funny thing about this, too, is we can also kind of play into it from Peter's perspective. That Peter is not fighting to, like, beat the crap out of Miles, right? He's not looking to, like, overcome Miles. He's looking to kind of subdue him, if anything else, right? Probably wear them up or something like that. If Peter were fighting Miles in the same vein that he was fighting somebody like Rhino or like Octopus or something like that, the fight probably would have gone a much different way, and it would have been over much faster. The reality is, which way this fight would have gone depends on which you like more. That's basically what it is. But if you're a fan of Miles, you're like, oh, of course Miles could overcome Peter Parker. If you don't believe me, just ask me and I'll tell you. But if you're a fan of Peter Parker, it's the exact same thing. And it's like, oh, Peter Parker definitely could have gotten the upper hand on Miles. I mean, I know because of Miles. Right? I mean, that's kind of how we just kind of what fans get. We need no other evidence than our own opinion, and that's basically it. Now, the funny thing is, Miles actually goes to take the mask off Peter, which Miles should know by now is kind of a no-no. It's just something that you don't do. And that leads to Peter basically reacting, waking up and then kicking Miles off the ledge of the building, right? And from there, Peter's like, dude, I think I just killed this kid. Spider-Man, I do not need that on my conscience. I do not need this on my conscience. Now, unbeknownst to him, of course, Miles has initiated his invisibility power, but nonetheless, Peter's just kind of like, okay, we gotta stop this is the problem. We gotta find this kid, right? And then Miles pops back up, gets the upper hand on Peter, kicks him, and then of course Peter ends up kind of spitting some webbing out. And then from there, he shoots his webbing into Miles' mask and yanks his mask off, right? And that's when he's kind of like, all right, here it's time for you to come through, right? Like, how are you, Spider-Man? What's going on here? Like, give me all the skin, give me all the information. The response of Miles is, you have to give me my mask back, right? Like anybody out here could see that I'm Spider-Man, and I have to keep my family and my identity protected. Like, give me my mask back. Now you would expect Peter to respond and say, yeah, I kind of understand where you're coming from. That's kind of my thing too. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and Peter needs information. The problem with this is he didn't really understand why Miles got the upper hand on him the first time, and so he didn't really even think about the Venom Blast this time, which Miles uses. He channels it into the wedding and then takes out Peter. It's genius. And that was one of the cool things that made Miles so interesting in the early comics, is when you were reading this character, you could actually watch him become a better Spider-Man as you were reading the comics. And so with every single story arc that you read, he was a better version of Spider-Man at the end of that story than he was before he started the story, right? It was really, really cool. But with regards to Peter, what you end up getting here is Miles basically using Peter's web shooters, right? Kind of swing them, down to the ground, and they kind of get them onto a roof, and they get them to safety. And when they collapse, right, he ends up taking the mask off of Peter, and he realizes, oh my God, this is Peter Parker. Now for him, he doesn't know this is Peter from the Marvel Universe, from the main Marvel Universe, right? He thinks it's like Peter Parker returns to his universe. He's like, I have no idea what I do here, right? And that's when he kind of looks over to the Tristilium, and Peter Parker's taken to the Shield headquarters, right? From there, he meets with Nick Fury. Now, most of the guys who read the Ultimate Universe know two things about Nick Fury. The first one is that he was based on Samuel Jackson. In fact, Samuel Jackson actually threatened to sue Marvel, but they ended up letting him play the role of Nick Fury in the MCU. The lawsuit didn't happen, right? That's why we got Samuel Jackson Nick Fury. But the other thing about this is that Nick Fury is highly skeptical, right? He is a super suspicious guy. And so when he starts asking questions, when he starts asking him, well, at least when he refers to him as Peter, and Peter's like, do you know me? And he's like, I know name, and it's that kind of a thing. The two of them start talking to each other, and it's kind of a cool bit of a conversation, right? Because Peter even makes reference to the fact that, like, I know your eye patch. But it's one of these little tidbit things. But when he asks him, like, are you Peter Parker? It's like, well, it's not that straightforward. It's like, okay, well then give me an answer. Like, give me this one hypothetical answer that you have. And Peter basically reiterates his whole fight with Mysterio and passing through the portal and then getting the fear and all that kind of stuff. And Nick Fury's kind of like, huh, okay. I mean, I can probably buy that story. It's so far fetched, it might just be true, right? It's one of those things. So he just kind of ends up giving Peter credibility. Now, the reality of this is that Bendis does this just for the sake of keeping the story moving forward. Under any other comic in the Ultimate Universe, Nick Fury would be like, no, I'm not buying it. You're going to stay in this cell and you tell me what's actually going on. And he would legitimately leave him. Nick Fury would have done that if you said that if this happened in the Ultimates and it was anybody else besides Spider-Man, if it was Ultimates or like the Ultimate Fantastic Four or the Ultimate X-Men, Nick Fury would be like, no, man, I'm not buying into that nonsense, that crazy malarkey. I'm not buying into any of that stuff, right? So he would just leave it. But Bendis does this for the sake of keeping the story moving forward. What he ends up doing is basically aiming Peter over to Miles and say, okay, it's your own job to go do your own thing. Your own job to get this whole thing sorted out and find out what's going on. And so what Peter does is, by virtue of what Nick Fury told him, the way that Miles is acting, that kind of thing, he starts to put two and two together. And so what he does is he really kind of asks the big question, like, tell me, kid, in this universe, is Peter Parker dead? Right? Is Peter Parker not alive here anymore? And that's what's kind of nuts, is because before Miles can really give him an answer and explain everything, both of them are shot through the helicopter by this avatar of Mysterio. And in turn, Miles basically saves both of them, and then kind of takes both guys, or really takes him and the pilot down to their safety, right? But basically, Mysterio's here and starts launching his attack against Peter and Miles. So this is when we go from Miles Morales meeting Peter Parker to Miles fighting Peter to Miles and Peter teaming up. All right, what's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are picking back up again with Spider-Man. I almost said Spider-Man 2. It's Spider-Man. We're picking back up with Miles Morales and Peter Parker. Now, this is kind of a three-pronged event, right? Like the first time, in the first issue they met, in the second issue they fought, and this one they team up. So it's kind of a cool bit of storytelling, right? But in the instance where they had initially fought each other, things had kind of popped off, and they were sort of coming to terms and with regards to this reality, they're suddenly met by this avatar of Mysterio. Now again, this is kind of the robot slash, well, really just straight robot that Mysterio is using. He is in the main Marvel universe, but he's piloting this as moving around in the Ultimate universe, right? And so because of that, as soon as it takes down the helicopter that Peter Parker and Miles Morales are in,
Casey Sarah Cheryl says that is sweet. Thank you.
Mysterio actually exists in the main Marvel universe. Doesn't really exist the same way in the Ultimate universe. much every single time. And the Ultimate Universe, he fights him once and dies. It's nuts. Like he's painfully outclassed in comparison to the power that Dormammu has. Like he kills him with a quickness, and that's basically it. That happens so incredibly fast. Because you're talking about Mysterio, who still maintains his ability to create illusions despite using a kind of avatar form, you end up having Peter Parker who picks up on what's going on. Now, it took him a moment to realize it because he's like, something weird's going on. I just want more powerful strain of the illusion that he normally uses. But what he ends up doing is conjuring all of Spider-Man's villains and the things that Miles Morales can as well, right? So basically, their greatest fears is consuming them. And with this happening, you really only ever see the Scorpion from the Ultimate Universe. You see Uncle Aaron, the power from the Ultimate Universe, and Omega Red from the Ultimate Universe. But you only really see those because those are only really the villains that Miles Morales has fought so far. But Peter Parker it's a whole host of stuff. Right? It's a whole host of things. Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus and all that stuff. But that's what makes it so bonkers is because of the fact that Miles doesn't really know how to navigate this. Now, this kind of illusion that Mysterio creates, that's one of the big things to understand. His illusions can be handled. If they're powerful enough, they can be handled. And that's one of the big differences is that in the early days, if I remember correctly, in the early days, his illusions were more or less intangible, right? So he could trick you into believing you were somewhere, but he couldn't really make things interact with you. In this instance, he can. And it's really kind of been that way for a number of years in Marvel Comics. But Mysterio uses his powers to quite literally have these guys attack Miles Morales and Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Right? So it's like Venom and it's Carnage and all these guys. And this is incredibly dangerous because these are forces that Miles isn't used to facing off against. But this is one of the big differences here is that Miles hasn't really faced off against Mysterio before. This kind of magic doesn't necessarily exist inside the Ultimate Universe. Now, this may seem like it would naturally work against Miles Morales. He's basically being exposed to something that he hasn't really seen before and wouldn't really know how to navigate the waters. But instead of doing what Peter Parker seems to be doing here, which is kind of overthinking it to a degree, instead, Miles actually manages to get the upper hand and basically incapacitate Mysterio temporarily, if for no other reason than to basically take down his avatar form and then essentially destroy it, right? Like destroy that body. Because Miles picks up on the fact this is the reason why it's happening. Now, again, this is one of those instances in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics where people were a little finicky. They were like, I mean, I have a hard time believing that Miles would be able to pick up on this and Peter Parker couldn't. You're talking about a character from two different realities to navigate waters. When this story first came out, there was one group of people who looked at this and said, okay, the only reason Miles is able to figure this out on his own is because Bendis is writing it and Bendis is pushing Miles and it really wants him to be like the new Ultimate Universe Spider-Man. And of what use would this character be if he didn't have some kind of caveat over Peter Parker from, Peter Parker in general, like even from the it's one of these interesting concepts, one of these interesting quagmires. But again, with regards to Mysterio, he's one of these villains where, by all standards of measurement, he would have gotten the upper hand on Miles Morales. Because what makes Mysterio's, his powers so incredibly potent is he's much like Mastermind. Spider-Man, which is the conclusion of the story where Peter Parker meets Miles Morales for the very, very first time. Right? Peter Parker from the main Marvel universe meets the Ultimate Spider-Man, Miles Morales. And the thing about behind this is that we pick up with Peter Parker following his Miles with Mysterio, and basically he's the kind of robot version of himself to move into the Ultimate Universe when he travels to the Ultimate Universe. Peter Parker essentially traveled to meet the Ultimate Universe's version of Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane Watson. Keep in mind, the last time they saw Spider-Man, it was their version of Peter Parker, and he died. And largely, it was just kind of the grieving process that went into it. Now, one of the things that we talked about in the early Miles Morales comics that we did is that there did come a point when Miles took on the Spider-Man costume and was met by Aunt May and they were kind of like, look, if you're going to do this, understand that you're living up to a legacy much bigger than yourself. Like, you don't just simply put on the Spider-Man costume and do your thing. You're living up to a legacy that Miles created, and you stand for everything you stood for. So this is not a thing to take lightly, right? So it's kind of, initially they were against it, but it's one of these things where it's kind of like, okay, we can sort of get on board once they realize the character of Miles Morales and what he had to offer. But the problem with this is that when Peter shows up, he's wearing the original Spider-Man costume, and as soon as Aunt May sees this, she gets pissed, right? Because he basically showed his face, and her thought is that it's some kind of a joke, right? When Stacy shows up and starts kicking the crap out of Peter Parker, thinking that he's pulling a stunt too, and it's not until Miles shows up and says, no, it's really actually Peter, right? It's not somebody pulling a trick or something like that, not somebody being a jerk. I don't really know of a reasonable human being that would show up on the doorstep of a woman and like basically two chicks who lost somebody close to them dressed as that person, right? I mean, if somebody were to do that, I would I would stand by and just watch them get the crap kicked out of them. I'd record it and then be like, yeah, man, this guy kind of had it coming. Like, that'd be my response. I'd be like, yeah, man, like, they were kind of a dick. They sort of had this comment, right? Nobody did anything. Let them get their just dessert. But this is actually Peter. This is actually Peter Parker here. And when Miles comes to his rescue, that's when Aunt May and Gwen Stacy basically start to work, right? And Peter's initial response was like I thought initially I died. I thought something happened. I'm like, I didn't really know what was going on. Like, I'm up here. I've only been putting the pieces together. I never should have come here, right? I never should have come here to this place. I'm sorry I did this to you. And then basically, Aunt May passes out. Right now, at that point, we switch over to the Ultimate Universe Tony Stark and Nick Fury. Right now, Nick Fury we talked about before. Ultimate Universe Iron Man, we've never really had a big discussion about. One of the big things to understand here is that Ultimate Iron Man, when he first showed up, was designed to be a more grounded version of Tony Stark from the main Marvel universe. Right, so not as intelligent, because even Tony in the main Marvel universe, his intelligence, even for the Marvel comics, borderline questionable. Right, like how could a person possibly be that smart? This version of Tony is really smart, but he is a version of intelligence we would expect to see here in the real world. Right, it's the nature of the Ultimate Universe, kind of a reflection of the real world the way it is now. And so he's not really able to pick up or really figure out what Mysterio, what's going on with Mysterio's character, right? How to reverse engineer the circuitry, where the signal's coming from, all that kind of stuff. The reality of this is there's an infinite number of universes out there, right? And Tony just doesn't have the ability to trace a signal back to his origin point. Now, if this were the main Marvel universe, the main Marvel Tony Stark would have figured it out like that, but he would have figured it out so fast because that's what the story called for. But the idea of the Ultimate Universe was to write more realistic stories, right? And really, if you're talking about an infinite number of universes, there really wouldn't be a way to trace the signal all the way back to its origin point, because it's not like it's a rope that leads from the main Marvel universe. All they have to do is just follow the breadcrumbs to get to its location. It doesn't really work that way, at least not for anybody here. And so at the end of the day, Tony doesn't really have any answers. He's like, the only way for me to really get some answers is to talk to that alternate reality version of Spider-Man, talk to Peter Parker. It's the only way for me to really figure out what it is that's going on here. Now, the funny comment he makes is, he said, how did you let Miles Morales run around with Peter Parker? And I figured you would attack him over the head, throw him into a hole, and then basically grab like the main Peter and done the same thing. Like kind of, kept Miles Morales under wraps so that he wouldn't really have any idea what's going on. And then basically took Peter and just kind of locked him up. But the idea behind this is that Fury really feels a bit of, regret when it comes to Peter, right? Peter was never properly trained to become a superhero. He was never properly trained. He was never inducted the way that he was supposed to be. He was just kind of allowed to do his thing. And that led to his eventual death. And Nick Fury felt a lot of responsibility for that. That's why when you go and you read Cataclysm, there's a lot of focus put on Nick Fury and the guilt he feels for the death of Peter Parker, because when he could have trained him or he could have helped him to become a better hero, he did. Instead, it was just kind of him doing his thing. And so with that guilt in mind, and all his promises that he made, it's kind of like, we're just going to let them work it out together, right? Which is actually the right move. The best move for Nick Fury to make is really for Peter, Aunt May, Gwen Stacy, to all kind of come to terms with this on their own. And so once Aunt May wakes up, you basically have Peter like telling stories, to Miles and to Gwen Stacy, them sharing stories with him, that kind of a thing, and kind of going back and forth, right? And Peter's coming to the older than you are. She's about my age. And she's like, well, I mean, like, are you dating her? And Peter's like, I mean, not really. Like, I'm basically dating Mary Jane Watson, right? Which is what Gwen Stacy is. And then as soon as this kind of explanation goes on, that Mary Jane is like a supermodel, which she's not in the Ultimate Universe, right? She's just like a nerdy girl. Once like she's a supermodel and all that kind of stuff, like Gwen Stacy's kind of shocked to find out that like Mary Jane Watson is this hugely popular, well-renowned model, and it's kind of like, wow, that's a little crazy. But when she starts asking, what about me, right? Like, what have I been? Like, what's going on with me? Peter's like, we should probably talk about something else. I don't have the heart to tell you that the Green Goblin threw you off the bridge, and I shot my weapon in your foot and broke your neck in the process, because that's basically what happened. I don't care what anybody says. She was not dead before Spider-Man got there. I don't care what anybody says. But, it's kind of an interesting thing, because it's like, there are parts of his reality he doesn't really want to divulge, because who knows how Gwen Stacy would react if it was like, well, you're dead and I'm the reason why. It's kind of like, get out of this house, right? I don't want you here. But it's really kind of new to her to learn, really fascinating for her to learn that there's whole other worlds and dimensions out there. Now, for her part, Aunt May is a lot more reserved still. Like, she's not nearly as excited as Gwen Stacy is. She's kind of bracing herself to the idea that it's not actually Peter Parker. It's like, well, we don't really know if it's Peter Parker. We don't really know if it's him. We don't know if that's the case. It could be somebody else pretending to be him. Now, in fact, like, it really is him. We know that. Miles Morales believes it. Gwen Stacy believes it. But Aunt May's doing this because in her heart of hearts, if she gives into this and then it turns out to be false, she'd lose it, right? Like, it would just be the most crushing experience. Because for her, when she kind of asked Peter, what led you to become this person, right? When he kind of starts talking to her about like Uncle Ben's the reason why he does this. That Uncle Ben, of course, is dead in his reality. But the fact is that he could have saved Uncle Ben and he didn't is the reason why he became a superhero the way that he did. And the idea that he could basically help other people and in a lot of ways atone for his past mistakes. He basically runs off the statement with great power, and then she finishes it, comes great responsibility. Now, it should be must come great responsibility. The fact that this is a lesson that Peter was taught by Uncle Ben tells Aunt May everything she needs to know, that it really is him. And that's what she kind of gives herself over and says, we thought like we lost you, right? We lost you and we didn't even get to say goodbye. And that's the important thing here, right? That's the important thing to understand. That's why Aunt May kept herself reserved in this part, right? Because if she had said, like, okay, yeah, you're probably Peter, and let her full self believe it, and then it turned out to just be some alternate reality version of Peter who was evil or something like that, but wasn't like this alternate reality counterpart to the one that she knew, which is to say, a good guy who fights the good fight and does what heroes do, then it would have broken her in her entirety, right? Like the inability of her to say goodbye, the chance that the fact that she never got to tell Peter that she was proud of him, that she loved him, right? To never say, like, to never be able to say, I'm sorry, or any of that stuff, right? To basically like confess or to kind of get to say her last goodbyes to him is something that's always haunted her. Having Peter here, this alternate reality version of Peter, even though she knows it's not her actual nephew, she knows it's not the Peter Parker from the Ultimate Universe, gives her a chance to effectively say goodbye, right? To say her goodbyes. And indirectly say it to Peter Parker from the Ultimate Universe to give her closure. It's basically what this does. Something that she's never had this entire time. And so Miles Morales, looking out the window, realizes, okay, Shield's on their way. We need to go, right? Because Shield is a lot more seedy in the Ultimate Universe than they are in the main Marvel Universe. In the main Marvel Universe, they're still kind of jerks, but like they're more inclined to work with you than against you. In the Ultimate Universe, they're like a police force almost, right? I mean, not specifically, but in terms of like how they function, right? Like they do their thing, and all there are just people who stand in the way is basically all that it is. But of course, Peter ends up saying goodbye to everybody here, and then of course he ends up getting in the car with Nick Fury, Miles Morales, and it's kind of a funny thing because Nick Fury asks, like, is there a Nick Fury where you come from? And he's like, yeah, but he's kind of a white guy. And then like Nick Fury's like, sorry to hear that, man. Which is kind of a funny thing. But again, it gives Aunt May the closure she needs. And that's why when the story came out, it was so huge. It was wrapping up all these plot threads, right? All these little things that have been left hanging. The reality is that if anybody but Brian Michael Bendis had taken this over, we probably would have never seen this, right? But Bendis started off with the Ultimate Spider-Man. He originally created it. It made sense that he would basically end it here and kind of continue things on with Miles. And that's why Spider-Man is so important. It's one part wrapping up plot threads that Bendis never got to wrap up after the death of Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe and the Cataclysm story, and it was a way to kind of officially transition into Miles. We'll find more, find out more why that's the case once we get to the end of this. But when he really meets with Tony Stark, he's kind of like, okay, there's a few differences here. Like one, the Tony Stark in my universe stopped drinking a while ago, which Nick Fury loves, and two, it's obvious this guy's not smart. And so with Tony kind of being like, look, like I need to know where his home is. I need to know where your universe is. When Peter starts to point him in that direction, then it turns into, okay, then we could at the very least figure out how to get you back. Like we could reverse engineer this stuff. Now, make no mistake, Tony Stark's not doing this out of the goodness of his heart. Tony Stark's doing this one part because he was directed by Nick Fury, but two, because he can get something out of it. Right? I mean, this is a level of technology that Tony just doesn't have access to. Being able to attain this technology and use it for his own ends is a huge benefit. Right? It's something that he desperately wants to. And so once they're basically looking at the broadcast that Mysterio's been putting out, over the internet, all day long and how many days he's been here, Miles picks up on the fact that one of these buildings is actually in Brooklyn. And he's like, one of these buildings is in Brooklyn. I'm familiar with it. And so they know exactly where it is. Mysterio is operating out of it. Right? They know his base of operations. Once they locate that, Nick Fury calls in everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean an entire SHIELD strike team alongside Spider-Man and alongside the Ultimate Four. What's going on, guys? This is Ross, and we are picking back up again with the conclusion of Spider-Man. Yes, we are wrapping up the Spider-Man event, and this is probably the single most important part of the story. Not necessarily because of what's happened so far, but because of the future of
I'm
Miles.
gonna go wash my eye out. I seem to have painted.
Mysterio is suffering from the
These
same
are not
problem that every supervillain faces: stupidity. So the idea behind this with Mysterio So the idea behind this with Mysterio is that he comes to the realization that he actually unintentionally defeated Spider-Man. That with Spider-Man being whisked off into this other dimension where Peter Parker in that reality is dead, that it leaves no Spider-Man in this universe, right? In the main Marvel universe. There is no Peter Parker here, right? He's off in the Ultimate Universe somewhere. And it was something that Mysterio had not really thought of before. And now he realizes that, like, man, dude, okay, like I actually defeated Spider-Man. But then the question becomes, why isn't it enough? Right? Like, why is it not enough? He's like, I have to see it, right? I have to see him suffer and die. I'll just take a peek for myself just for one moment. Now, this is Brian Michael Bendis being Brian Michael Bendis. If it were me writing the story, it would be like, oh man, dude, I won, cool, the end, and that would be it, right? It would be Mysterio realizing he basically got the upper hand on Peter Parker, and there's no more Spider-Man. The purpose of it is, Bendis wanted to tell the story, and so basically, Mysterio comes to the realization that he wants to actually see Spider-Man suffer and die, and so he basically reactivates the portal and takes a peek inside, only for Webby to come flying out and it basically attach itself to him. And then, of course, we have Peter Parker, you have Miles Morales, and the Ultimate team who's there, right? The Ultimate Avengers who are all there. And it's kind of like, well, right? Like, well, damn, like that's basically it, right? Like, okay. I mean, who could have possibly seen that coming? The thing about this, though, is that one thing to understand with Mysterio is he's usually always got an ace up his sleeve. And that's one of the things that makes him so dangerous, right? So, not Nick Fury, you have the rest of the guys who are kind of like, cool, that they saved. Keep in mind, they're not used to the kind of guns you have in the main Marvel universe, where somehow they always have some kind of escape or something like that. Remember, the main Marvel universe is a lot less realistic than the Ultimate universe. Mysterio immediately types away and just starts releasing a whole host of these chemicals and sets off an explosion. And when that happens, basically everybody appears. Like Iron Man, Nick Fury, Miles Morales, all these various guys are met by what are essentially their worst nightmares. Right? That's literally what they're exposed to. Using the power of Mysterio, he exposes all of them to their worst nightmares. Right? So you've got all the Ultimates who are dead at the hands of Tony Stark, which of course is definitely an allusion to what we saw in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You've got Nick Fury who's watching the world on fire, watching the world burn. Green Goblin is killed on May in front of, I'm sorry, really Dr. Octopus and Green Goblin have killed on May in front of Spider-Man. And then you've got the Prowler who killed Miles Morales' mother and father. And so because of that, where everybody else is kind of succumbing to this, Miles sort of succumbs to it a little bit, but then manages to get the upper hand on it, even if only for a moment. And when that happens, he realizes Mysterio's making a break for the portal, and he tackles Mysterio. Now, by all standards of measurement, Miles should have been 100% incapacitated here. And again, that's kind of the critique of Bendis, right? Bendis is just, well, of course Miles Morales has to be on top. He's the guy that we're fighting right now. He's the main Spider-Man. We can't have him lose, right? So it's kind of like, okay, it's sort of, he's going to go with it in this story. That's just kind of the way that Bendis does. But when you end up having Mysterio, who of course uses powers on Miles yet again, he almost gets the upper hand. Miles dodges the attack, goes invisible, and then Mysterio, trying to figure out what happens, ends up being attacked by Miles again. Now, again, this is kind of Bendis basically saying, like, this is how capable Miles is. Now, the reality of this is that while this was kind of, I wouldn't say far-fetched, but kind of like, what in the world's going on here? Back in the day, in this day and age, it's common practice, and it kind of makes sense. I think that with this story and Miles being able to overcome Mysterio so fast, despite Mysterio's abilities, was really more than just Bendis wanting to tell the story, as opposed to just kind of letting it play out organically. In reality, having somebody like Mysterio was probably not the best thing. It probably should have been somebody more like Dr. Octopus, because Mysterio's powers are not limited to some kind of tentacle attached to his back that go after you. Then he messes with your mind, he messes with your head. And so there isn't really a whole lot of reason to believe that Miles would somehow be able to overcome this so quickly. Right? If you're trying to maintain that kind of comic book
so great. I need to try my other pen here.
Is actually keeping Mysterio inside the Ultimate Universe. And the reason why is because Mysterio now knows that Peter Parker's Spider-Man. And so it kind of creates this situation where Peter's like, okay, cool, yeah, man, hold on to him. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for looking out. It's thing to do. But this is really the most important message from the past. Which is why we kind of more or less ham-fisted our way through this. There's a point where Peter and Miles are talking. And Peter basically thanks him for keeping the legacy of Spider-Man going. And when Miles asks him, like, does that mean that I have your blessing? Peter's like, absolutely. This is why Michael Bendis giving a big middle finger to the naysayers. And we talked about that before, that when Miles first showed up, there were a lot of people who were really pissy about the fact that Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe was killed. And they didn't want Miles. They wanted Peter Parker. The response of Bendis is, you already have Peter Parker. You've had him for like 15 years, right? You've had Peter Parker for a long, long time. You need to get over yourself, right? It's time for a new Spider-Man. It's time to kind of continue on this story, focusing on somebody else. We can't do that in the main Marvel universe because Peter Parker is etched in stone forevermore. He's Spider-Man in the main Marvel universe. We can't change that. Marvel editorial will let me change it, even if I wanted to. It'd be a terrible idea to do it anyway. But in the Ultimate Universe, I created this character. Bendis give it. Bendis take it away. And that's kind of his stance on that. And so when you have a lot of people who are giving him flack and really complaining a lot on the various forum boards and social media and things like that about Miles Morales taking over the role of Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe, this was really Bendis saying, no, he's not going anywhere, right? If what you expected me to do was to basically give in, acquiesce, and admit defeat and say, hey, you 50 comic book fans who sound like 5 million, obviously you guys don't like Miles Morales, so let me just get rid of him and bring back Peter Parker. If that's what you were expecting, then I'm sorry, you're greatly mistaken. That's not what's going to happen. And so we ended up just getting Miles Morales going forward. And so it's one of these things where with Miles kind of
This is hot, says Evan. Where are you at on my list here, Evan? I think you're still quite a few back. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're number 5, Evan. You're number 5 in line right now.
At this point, he kind of goes forward with a whole new level of confidence and confidence. And that's kind of a cool thing, because what you do is you switch over to Peter Parker himself, back home, right, back in his little apartment. He's like, Miles Morales. I wonder if we have a Miles Morales in the main Marvel universe. And then it is. Now, of course, we know, as far as I'm aware, that's not true in Marvel Comics. This story was told like 8 years ago. We know it's not really true. At the time this was written, everybody wanted to know if it was true or not. It was like the biggest cliffhanger of like a decade, right? Like, where they will do have a Miles Morales in the main Marvel universe? And it's like, I wonder what's going to happen with that, right? It's kind of crazy, but it is a cool story. Let me know you guys take down in the comment section. Did you guys enjoy Spider-Man, the very first story, the very first time where Peter Parker and Miles Morales meet one another? Let me know what you guys think. I'm kind of curious what your all stance is. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comic Explain, make sure you guys press that button to become part of the live pool. Guys, make sure you drop a like. I'll catch you all later.
Master eat Khan. He told the Zabrak that he could sense the Jedi was full of fear and anger. And Khan's response was, quote, perhaps it's the Zabrak. And thousands of years earlier, Revan was told that the Zabrak will, quote, keep hacking at a fallen foe even after death, mutilating the corpse at a pure bloodbath. What's up, meta-nerds? This video will cover the Zabraks. Everything from their biology, culture, history, and how you get the Iridonian and Dathomirian Zabrak, and look at members that change galactic history, covering all of the lore from both legends and canon. So let's learn more about the violent history of this wild species. But before we do, I want to talk about a very violent and wild mobile game, Raid Shadow Legends. This game found the perfect spot of being Earl of some tricky. It's really over important. Did any the few force sensitives that remain tasked this AI with figuring out what could be done from the biological side, perhaps early research into midichlorians. It decided that to experiment, they should incarnate several different types of sentient beings. All of them are humanoid, or maybe it's more accurate to say racconoid in shape, with two arms, two legs, and a head which contains a mouth and sensory organs. They would have a similar height of 1.8 meters or 5 feet 9 inches, and similar lifespans averaging 80 years. These species were seeded onto their homeworlds around 30,000 BBY, and the zebrak would quickly become the dominant species on Iridonia due to their intelligence, violence, and biological hardiness. The most striking feature were the horns on their head. These shrunk in size over the tens of thousands of years, and at the time that they were planted on Iridonia, they would have been much larger. At a time that biologists believed these would have been used for both offense and defense, these were likely used for combat for social dominance and for securing mates, since the male horns still do grow to be much longer than the females, as the males would engage in fights to the death in order to propagate their genes. And they're still seen in the modern zebrak, and really start growing significantly once they hit puberty around 12 years old. And by using this X-ray of Master Eats Paw, we can see that they are bones that grow directly out of their skull. These horns would grow in a variety of different patterns, length, and even number. As for diet, they were all carnivorous, so no naboo wheatgrass for these folks. And they also possessed two hearts, providing more rapid and thorough oxygenation of the blood when vigorously engaged, either running away from threats or when locked in a fight. This ability is literally superhuman and would exhaust countless human combatants over the millennia. The harsh conditions on Iridonia also made them relatively less receptive to pain than most species, and their natural predators here were remarkably deadly, turning all the zebrak into fiercely combative people. Almost all Zabrak would take on facial tattoos during a rite of passage to adulthood, which often indicated their family and region, but some were just chosen by the individual to represent something personal to them. As you might expect, their early civilizations were extremely aggressive, and though they would become more peaceful as their technology and culture became more advanced, this past left a permanent mark on their temperament. As many species regarded most Zabraks to be arrogant at best and murderous at worst, but no one ever called them dumb brutes. The people had already traveled outside of their solar system tens of thousands of years before the Battle of Yavin, taking less than 5,000 years to go from being spawned by the Rakata to having their own little colonial empire in 5 different solar systems. It was at this point that the Duros discovered them, and likely where the species was introduced to the hyperdrive, the miracle tech that opened them up to the rest of the galaxy. These savvy traders understood that Iridonia was a prime location as a midway point between Coruscant and the Outer Rim, and the dictatorship that ruled Zabrak was quick to make a trade agreement. This brought prosperity to their world, including imports from everything to exotic foods to high tech, that helped to raise their capital city of Malodrus to the level of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Here, many would slowly lose their native Zabraki language in favor of the universal language of galactic basics. But this all came at a grave cost: war.
Horrifying reports from the Outer Rim seem to portend the utter destruction of the Republic.
The first would be in the year 3996 BY. These fallen Jedi would set the galaxy ablaze, with their fierce Mandalorian allies terrorizing colonies throughout the outer and mid rims.
Of all wars in Republic history, the war with the Mandalorians was the bloodiest.
As one war bled into another, resulting in decades and then centuries of war, with only small breaks in between. The Mandalorian warriors were infamous for their brutality, and by this time the number of Zabrak colonies were growing exponentially. They quickly found they were no match for the Mandalorians, but the Zabrak did love a good fight, and those biological advantages mentioned earlier did help them to earn some victories. We get a first-hand account of this from the incredible engineer Val Dur.
I remembered when word of the Mandalorian attacks arrived on Iridonia. My people had colonies across the Outer Rim. Many of them were among the first systems to fall. I hated them. I wanted to destroy them, to give them the mercy they gave the people they conquered. Victories were rare, but we celebrated every Mandalorian's death. That loss of control blinded me, turned me into a weapon.
This Zabrak was also a Jedi, serving under Mitra Surik during the Mandalorian War, and was who designed, constructed, and activated the Mass Shadow Generator. This war would also see the invasion of Iridonia, where the Mandalorians actually captured the entire planet. Though it should be noted that some Zabrak chose to join their clans, the Mandos always willing to take in any beings that wished to live through conquest, and who lived by the Mandalorian codes of honor. But for most Zabrak, because the Republic was the one fighting off the Mandos and who eventually liberated Iridonia, millions of them rushed to enlist with the Republic Armed Forces. After his creation, the mass shadow generator destroyed Malachor 5 and ended the Mandalorian Wars. Baldur would go on with future Surik to find lost Jedi Masters and help to rebuild the Jedi Order. This era also saw Jedi Master Cal Sindaraj, who held the rank of Battle Master during the Great Galactic War of 3681. His Padawan would become one of the most important and powerful Jedi in the history of the Order, Titile Shan. Both witnessed firsthand the return of the Sith Empire. The Dark Order that was once thought vanquished had returned, in blitzkrieg horrible. In this opening battle of another decade of war, Dratch would be killed in saber combat with Lord Vindican and Malgus, a move that did help ensure that Sean could escape. So it's obvious that the Rakatan experiment to see if they could engineer some deeply force-sensitive creatures seems to have worked. And though their appearance may have been scary to some other species, and their pugnacious and arrogant attitudes may have made you think that they would be on the bad guy's side, we see these Iridonian Zabraks were mostly light-side-wielding Jedi, or warriors fighting for the Republic. But the years that followed would see an increase in mercenaries and darker influences on Dathomir. The combination of Iridonian trade wealth, colonial interest to protect, and their fighting spirit even naturalized the Zabrak mercenaries. In the previous age, their hated enemy was the Mandalorian, and with those people's devastating defeat and losing any sole leadership, the Mando clans were increasingly making their way as bounty hunters as well. These once war enemies were now often engaged in skirmishes for credits. And over the centuries, these two peoples became synonymous with the deadly profession. This age also saw a sort of homecoming for the Elohim. One of the Zabrak ancient colonies had remained relatively remote, forgotten by the galactic community, and in isolation gave rise to a new species that descended from the Zabrak, known as the Elohim. The horned head is similar, but everything from the bone structure of the skull to the internal organs were different. Though now reconnected with the galaxy at large, the Elohim never ventured into much more than mining on world. But the colony on Dathomir would give rise to Zabrak that would change the course of galactic history. There are certain locations in the galaxy that have a natural charge of either dark side or light side energy. Dathomir was a world imbued with the dark energies that the Night Sisters drew on for their magics. This green energy being called magical ichor, spirit ichor, or the waters of life. By around 600 BBY, the rogue Jedi Knight Mother Ayla was learning to use her powers in the Force to channel this ichor, dominating some of the other human colonists on this world. She created an all-female sect of Dathomirian witches, which over time split up into several clans. These clans would kidnap males to breed with, but at one point a group of pirates came to Dathomir with hopes of offloading some captured Zabrak colonists. There is a lot of speculation that humans are also genetic creations of some ancient aliens, and evidence that supports this is the fact that they can breed with both Twi'leks and Zabraks. Perhaps they were all created by the Rakata. When the witches saw the vitality and hardiness of the Zabrak males, the Night Sisters were quick to take them as mates. Using their proficiency in dark magics, there was no way for the captives to revolt, and they set up slave camps for the males to dwell in, where the females would only visit for purposes of intimidation or the ritual called selection. This trial by combat, the Zabrak would be forced to fight to the death with his own friends and even immediate family members. These human witches bred with Zabraks, giving rise to a new species called Dathomirians, as there was no native original species here. So these interbred beings were genetically distinct, and the expression of these Zabrak features differed in the males and females. Females still looked mostly human, with pale white skin and some hair, but didn't have any horns. The males would retain their horns, but their skin color would now range from red, orange, and yellow. So from this point on, the next generation of Night Sisters were no longer human, but Dathomirian, also called Dathomirian Zabraks. And although that term usually has the connotation that you're referring to the males, technically Ventress and Talzin are both listed as Dathomirian Zabraks. Females that were born of these unions were raised as witches, and the males were just thrown back into the slave camp. But interestingly, the women would take on some of the Zabrak culture in the form of their tattoos. While the males had natural striping that was accented by the tattoos, many females chose to add some forms of tattoos as well. And so think about just how long this tradition stretches back, starting with the ancient tribal Zabrak of Iridonia, still seen not only in the colonists, but now adopted by these captors. When Mother Talzin rose to lead the Night Sisters, she returned to some of their old Zabrak mercenary roots, hiring out some of the sisters and their male-named servant warriors in order to protect some wealthy patrons. And again, we see that as soon as they open themselves up to the galaxy at large, the Sith are not far behind. While Sidious would be attracted to the immense dark side powers of Mother Talzin, convincing her that they should become allies, and that together they could rule the galaxy. But once he detected the young Maul, he kidnapped the boy and disappeared. This little red child was the biological son of Mother Talzin, I know it gets confusing because everybody calls each other brother or sister, and they all call her mother. The canon lore is clear on this. So Maul's father would have passed an immense physical trial to mate with the mother of the clan. And of course, he would have some of her immense dark side power and the magics imbued as well. All things Sidious would hone into a killing machine. But Maul certainly wasn't the first Zabrak Sith. Though the Old Republic Zabrak Jedi were much more famous and powerful, there were several Sith throughout the Empire, and even in the later Brotherhood of Darkness. In fact, there was a group of 3 Zabrak apprentices that tried to ambush and kill Darth Bane in the Sith Academy on Korriban. Events like this made him realize that the weakness of the Sith was that several lesser Sith could team up and kill the greater Lord of the Dark Side. If only one being could be the complete master of darkness, the embodiment of it, and train a soul apprentice to one day replace him. That apprentice could kill this incredibly powerful master on their own. They would be worthy of the mantle of the dark side, a practice that would come to be known as the Rule of Two, getting away from the situation of 3 lesser Zabrak apprentices ambushing someone out of fear and jealousy. But Maul would become one of the defining characters of the final decades of the Republic. Thinking back to their ancient and intense hatred for the Mandalorians, it is poetic that Maul would manipulate his way to the throne of Mandalore and drag their homeworld into a war that they would never recover from. Along his journey, he would be saved by his blood brother Savage Opress, who not only passed his own adventures as assassin, but would also be enhanced with the magics, the green ichor or spirit of life. With both him and Maul, you see how their biology could be altered with this sorcery, growing taller, getting denser muscles and bones, increasing their stamina, and even elongating their horns. With their natural Zabrak attributes of those 2 hearts, and that greater resistance to pain, these 2 would go on to use these traits to kill numerous Jedi in the final years of the Clone Wars. It truly is an incredible testimony to Obi-Wan Kenobi's skills with the Sword. She was born in Macedonia and was seen as a moral mark, sometimes not going out of her way to help people, and also never causing any problems or threatening innocents. She would take in her niece, Jazamari, who would become a bounty hunter during the time of the Galactic Civil War, and eventually become a valuable asset to the New Republic. Though the Dathomirian Zabrak force wielders of this era stole the show, there were of course the high-ranking Iridonian Jedi like Eve Koth and Agen Kolar. We saw how Grievous would use his natural biological resistance to pain to be able to torture the Master even longer. Master Kolar would be killed during the attempted arrest of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, but Koth would survive Order 66. He would marry a fellow Zabrak named Mira, who then gave birth to a daughter. Darth Vader would discover them just moments after Koth's child was born, killing the Master, and his Inquisitor kidnapped the Force-sensitive girl. Legends say that Master Shakti also survived Order 66, but when she was hunted down by Starkiller, Shakti's Padawan Mars Brood fell to the dark side. What was really unique about her is that her horns had a unique deep red color. Now, something that isn't often fully grasped is that the final attack by Grievous, Dooku, and Sidious that destroyed the Night Sisters and killed Mother Talzin for good might have caused the Dathomirian Zabrak subspecies to go extinct. Only the males were spared, being off in their hands, but all of the witches were hunted down. So this mixed human-Zabrak subspecies was believed to have come to an end. It wasn't until Merrin was discovered 5 years after the establishment of the Empire. She and a few other Night Sisters did survive and were hiding out in the rubble of their once powerful coven. And though we can't be certain, perhaps this subspecies still lives on. During the chaos of this post-war era and into the Civil War, crime would flourish in many areas across the galaxy, often attracting Zabrak youth particularly, as they were stronger than most species in a fight, and were actively targeted by gang leaders, as a couple of powerful, horn-headed beings in your crew had an especially intimidating look. Iridonia and all of the Zabrak colonies would feel the stranglehold of the Empire, and quickly undermine most of their industry, and turn their population into a workforce to support the large stormtrooper garrisons that were springing up on all of their territory. That Zabrak spirit of independence and combativeness became a great asset to the Rebel Alliance. Much like their flocking to the Old Republic thousands of years ago, this occupation of Iridonia was not tolerated. Guerrilla-style tactics killed many bucketheads in the streets of the Zabrak capital, and throughout the Civil War you would see numerous members of their species in rebel uniform. With the fall of the Empire, they would become powerful allies of the New Republic. And then over 100 years later, we get one last Zabrak that I want to mention, named Wolf Zazen, who was a Jedi Master during the Sith Imperial War and Second Imperial Civil War, fighting it out against Darth Great's Galactic Empire. And so that's it for their biology and history, but you definitely want to hear these cool facts and behind-the-scenes stuff. In the Clone Wars, there was this confusing conversation.
Under the impression that Darth Maul's homeworld was Iridonia. Dathomir is the planet where Maul was raised. Iridonia is where the rest of the males of the species dwell.
The Folklore and canon and legends both say that they simply farmed the men, keeping them in their slave camps and breeding with them. This here seems to imply that the males were seen as actively being moved from Iridonia. You can make sense of this by simply stating that they were unsure of how it really worked. The Night Sisters were one of the most secretive organizations in the galaxy, or that this did happen sometimes to sort of freshen up the ranks of men to pick from. This episode would make it the first time Iridonia was mentioned in canon. It was first introduced in the novel Episode 1 of Journal Dark Maul, released in the year 2000. I wanted to point out that the early contact with Duros traders is from a role-playing adventure game that has several endings, some of which result in minor political tensions between these people, but one has a small-scale war erupting on Iridonia, which would make it the first interplanetary war that the Zabrak ever engaged in, predating the Great Sith War and the Mando issues. The Witches of Dathomir go back to 1994 with the novel The Courtship of Princess Leia. But what's really interesting is that in 1985, the TV movie Ewoks, The Battle for Endor, had the sorceress Charles. She was retconned into being a Night Sister, and because this takes place long after the mating with the male Zabrak slave, it might be right to consider her a Dathomirian Zabrak. This would make it so that from a certain point of view, the subspecies actually predates the official introduction of the Zabrak in the form of Eve Koth in The Phantom Menace, which was released in 2001. So that's it for the Zabrak species. If you liked it, please hit the like button and comment your thoughts on this species or what videos you'd like to see next. All of that really helps the YouTube algorithm. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more, and be sure to check out the description, where you can pick up cool Star Wars art or free audiobooks, learn how you can support this channel for free, or check out our Patreon and PayPal. For just $1, your name could be here. Special shout out to our $25 tier, Chris Garcia, Andrew Van, Sarah Diaz, Cass Costello, and Carlos Velez. But most important of all, remember, if you ever have credits to burn, hire Zabrak and Mandalorian bounty hunters and give them opposing jobs. Then just sit back and enjoy the carnage. And of course, we'll be with you. Always.
Exactly my thoughts, Kenita. What are we going to do? The only thing we can do with the mystery. I shall conduct an investigation immediately. Aha! Fingerprints. My own. How are you on the night of March 3rd? Sorry, I tend to get carried away. But we do have to chercher la femme. Chercher la femme. Yes. You know what you do when you speak French? Please remember you're on a case. That's right, case. Now, what was that about chercher la femme? An old saying I just made up. I am the woman. Very clever. Then you do suspect me. Oh, I do. The owner of our house. Mischievous. Petite femme. Well, say I. I won't talk without a lawyer. She's true. The psychological effect of the hose makes them all. How about you? I claim the Fifth Amendment. God, you went to law school. I was absent. Hey, everybody. What's going on? Buster, we're right in the middle of a very important interrogation. Oh, that's what happened to the hose. Don't you know the whole cellar's leaking all over the place? Well, we found out one thing. What's that? We need a plumber. I'll help you. But I haven't finished my interrogation yet. Interrogation? Who? Yours. Well, Sting and I had a slight brush. That's what you call a third degree? Is it getting to you? Oh, yeah. Hey, you can take it up to the fourth degree. Uncle Fester, please, you're not cooperating at all. What did you want to know? We want to know what happened to Thing. Oh, why didn't you say so? Thing disappeared. We know that. We want to know a thing that was foul play. Well, the way Fingers has been acting lately, I'd call it fair play. How can you be so callous? They're in private practice. That does help. Hey, why don't you let your mama? They had a terrible fight in the kitchen. Did? They ruined my blackbird pie. That's what he did. Let him get away. Let who get away? Blackbirds. All 420 of them. Stood on helping Lurch for them. Lurch. Of course. Lurch. It's always the button. Lurch, I'll take you to wipe that smile off your face. Please, please, gone. Well, I guess we're right back where we started. Sorry, old man. Darling, why don't we call the police? Police? Well, I suppose so. Details. Darling, remember you're on a case. You're right. Operator, please connect me with the police department. Well, of course it is. If your family thing was missing, wouldn't you consider that an emergency? Hello, police department. This is Mrs. Adams. I'd like to report a missing thing. What? Just who? Darling, shall I ask for the burglary division or missing persons? Well, there's a moot point. Find out if they have a miscellaneous. But if it isn't a person, just what sort of a thing is it that's missing? Is it a pet? Well, it's a family container. Oh, it's a servant. Well, isn't that a person? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Well, have you got a picture of it? Yes, I believe we do. Just a moment. Is that family portrait still around? Yes, but I'm afraid King is with it. Don't you remember? He took the picture. Look, lady, unless you can give me something more specific to go on, I'm sorry, but we can't be any help. You know, who cares? Run ahead, the lost but found. I'm making a plan. I saw your head. Expert, but it's not our thing. Think you can verify that? I mean, you still want it? Yeah. Name your price. $250. It's a deal. You'll have to excuse my husband. He drives a very fine car. Business is business. Can't have you upping the price on it. No, of course not. Thanks a lot. I'm on the way down to the dump now. And if I find any other bargains, I'll let you know. You do that. Oh, we'll be days finding just the right spot for all these beautiful things. Certainly had a wonderful response to our ad. I'd give them all up for just one look at our thing. This may be it. I hope so. Running out of food. Thank you, Rich. Morticia, it's a ransom note. A ransom note? You mean? He's been fingered. The ransom is to be paid at the stroke of midnight, and do not call the law if you expect to get things back in one piece. Oh, Gomez. Courage, my dear, courage. The ransom is to be paid by a disinterested party. I know just the one. That famous private detective. What's his name? Naturally. Little things happen. Sam. Figure on a car. Sam Hart? No. Sam Clark? Sam Diamond? That's it. Sam Diamond.
his last name?
Thing.
Thing? What kind of a name is that?
Fits him perfect.
That's true. Signs himself Thing T Thing.
And the T stands for?
Thing.
Look, folks, kidnapping's a little bit out of my line. So if you'll excuse me.
Because I do believe he's our man. Ransom knows that it is interested party. He seems very.
Exactly. I'll weigh up the ransom.
Way up the ransom?
Well, just a few precious stones.
Seeing is worth his weight in it, even with his thumb on the scale.
We'll pay your fee with them if you don't mind.
I'm sure Mr. Diamond won't mind diamonds.
No, it goes with me.
Somebody mentioned diamonds?
What is that?
That's Uncle Fester. We need him to open the safe for the ransom.
Now let's get at it.
You don't know the combination of your own safe?
Uncle Fester enjoys cracking it.
There's a fun day to ask him to an adventure.
You know, Gomez, you're gonna have to change the combination on that safe. It's getting too easy.
I think next time I'll have it wired completely.
Oh boy, I'll get a bang out of that.
Well, let's see what we have here. Oh, I wonder what I've done with that.
Oh, darling, this bomb won't go off for another 6 months yet. I wish you wouldn't set them so far in advance. We tend to lose interest.
Here we are. Sample from our diamond mine.
All of our really fine stones are cursed. They're in the Adams family.
Oh, there are such. I mean, they couldn't possibly be real.
Oh, from where?
Fish, there you go with that French again. I told you I'm not responsible for my actions when you talk that way.
Two things we haven't mentioned.
I'm not sure. You did say you were going to pay my fee in gems.
Oh, yeah. Only too happy to unload a few. Let's see. $8,402. That's a satisfactory fee.
Oh, sure, that'd be fine. Now, what do I have to do?
Simply follow instructions.
Cemetery at midnight? What could happen to me there? Don't answer that. I'll do it.
Certainly inspires confidence, doesn't he?
I thought all the dash and daring of those private detectives in the movies was an exaggeration.
Caroline, don't be so naive. The cinema is a reflection of life. Men like Sam Diamond are forceful, fearless, and absolutely infallible. I don't know, man. I so soon? But you're tired to enjoy the moonlight. We usually do when we visit the cemetery.
Gomez, he's such a romantic. Where's Steve? Didn't you delay the ransom?
How's that?
You put it on the last grave?
Just a hand. Reached up and snatched it away. A hand? I knew you wouldn't believe me. But it was a hand. A hand.
Well, we do believe you, old boy.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
You made contact with things.
You mean that was thing?
Dear, sweet, wonderful thing.
Here. Take the fee. Just let me get out of here.
Very sporting of him, wasn't it? Handling the case for nothing.
I didn't understand
yourself. Didn't you think?
I thought the handwriting was familiar.
What's the big idea, Dave? Neglected. Test us. Wanted to see if we cared enough to ransom him back. Well, you got your answer. Sam Diamond liked you so much he wouldn't even accept a fee. Some things cannot be spoiled.
Well, darling, we have been neglecting him of late. Perhaps we should take him out. Sing love. Take him to a concert.
Splendid. You can rattle along on his castanet. I'll call her to have him get the car ready. The car, Lurch. And, oh, Lurch, we have a surprise for you.
Aren't you going to let Sing know that you're glad he's back? That should make you feel right at home.
Alright, we're moving right along with this guy. He is almost there. Just need to cover up the webs here, finish going over them with some shadow. Maybe go over them one more time with highlights and shadow, and then obviously I gotta fix his mouth. But I just gotta wait for the layers of paint to dry inside his mouth before I continue all the way.
Where are you going, Master Ray? Concert. Boy, you sure look ridiculous.
Mister, it's plain to see you have those sartorial something.
I resent that. Now, dear, we haven't got time for that right now. You're ready.
Now, sing that sartorial something.
I'm glad, because he sure dresses funny.
Well, here you are. We're off. Little finger.
Darling, where you always rub. In the glove compartment.
I think that's looking pretty neat. I'm doing like a Clayton Crane kind of dab gradient in there. I love when he does that. Alright, I will take a little break and I'll be back later. Maybe I'll save it for tomorrow.